So anyway, I'm Carla from St. Paul, and with the Solidarity Committee of the Americas, and I was one of the people who went on Rodrigo's and Sharon's trip in February, and it was really great. It was very well organized. I've been on some trips before where, well, they didn't let anybody just stay and keep the bus waiting, let's put it that way, and we had a great guide. I hope Sarah can be available for this trip as well. So that's me.
I'm Marcy, and I'm also with the Solidarity Committee of the Americas in Minnesota. And I don't know, I think almost everybody here is from Minnesota, but I went on the trip too, and I thought it was a great trip. I've been to Cuba about 12 times, and it was one of the better trips I went on. I thought, like Carla said, it was really well organized. We got to do a lot of things. Probably the best thing was we got to meet a lot of Cubans, and that was really wonderful. So that to me is one of the highlights of going to Cuba, is to meet Cubans and have a chance to interact with them. So
I am here in Memphis, Tennessee, and I work with Rodrigo as part of ProximityCuba. I'm on the board, and I've been leading trips for about 10 years now. Wow. And yeah, and I was actually on the most recent trip that Carla and Marcy were on. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. So Rodrigo, why don't you take it away and then say what we need to hear?
Introduce yourself too.
Sure. Good evening to everyone. I'm Rodrigo Gonzalez. I'm here in Havana, Cuba. I'm very sorry if the connection is not that great. I'm using a VPN to be connected to Zoom because the United States blocked Zoom. So that means I'm trying to, I'm using a third channel to get connected to you. So I apologize if I have any connectivity problem.
No problem.
So thank you. I'm one of the organizers of the trip for this November 5th to the 12th. And as today, we have 14 people who sign up. Unfortunately, I know everybody's been able to get the notice on time. Some people actually are not going to be able to make it to this meeting, but this is our first kind of orientation meeting to get to know each other and also to go over on the overview of the trip. The deadline for registration is next week, so we still have some people who might join. In fact, in the last few days, we have been contacted by several people who are interested in traveling to Cuba. So we are talking of a group of 10 to 15 people approximately. That's going to be the size of this trip, okay? And the first thing that we have to acknowledge as our organizer is to have a commitment from all the travelers. And the commitment is by paying the deposit, which is give us a guarantee that you're saving the place. That's one of the things that we're going to be talking tonight. And you still have until next week to pay the deposit and to submit all the documents. I know many of you already have submitted the documents. We are requesting that you have to fill out a registration form and send us a photocopy of your passport, of the main page of the passport. That means where your picture and your information is. And we are requesting to send us a signed travel affidavit, which is basically that you have to mark out of the 12 options that you can travel legally to Cuba. This is a protocol that you will have to follow not only with us, but also with the airlines. because it's required by the United States government due to the US blockade. So what we're gonna be talking tonight is to review a little bit, I wanna say a little bit, have a review of what to expect in Cuba and what are the next steps that you have to do to travel to Cuba.
Could
One
I
of the
jump
first,
in for a
yes.
second? Just
Yes.
which category are we traveling under this time? I think it changed. We're doing people to people, aren't we? So that's
correct. Thank you very much, Carol, for your question, because as June 5th, the United States government made a change and make it more flexible for Americans to travel to Cuba. So basically, the option that we're using is the educational option, which is the people-to-people category. And that's mean that you are in a structured program to meet Cubans, Cubans in Cuba, okay? And that's the mark, that's the category that we are encouraging to be for participants to mark. You still can mark the one that we've used in the past, which is the support of the Cuban people, because this program is not only educational, but also goes to support the Cuban people. So either category will be fine. Our recommendation is for everybody to mark the one that use people to people, the educational activities. That mean legally that you're going to be participating in a full-time schedule doing educational activities in Cuba to connect with the Cuban people. So that's something that Sharon actually might also talk a little bit and a little later. But our first concern, and this is the most perhaps complicated things that we have to make, is to arrange the flight. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to arrange a flight, what are the options, and I know people are traveling from different part of the country, so people might have different type of options in terms of airlines. And I'm going to ask my colleague Sharon to talk about that. But before I pass the mic to Sharon, I want to mention that after we talk about the flights, I'm going to talk about the documents that you need for traveling to Cuba, what to expect in terms of the itinerary. We do have an itinerary that's been published on our website, which is a general idea of what to expect, in which we've been reviewing with Carla. Carla's giving us some feedback. There's certain things that we're going to be doing exactly the same from last February, but also we do have new activities. And especially since now the situation in Cuba in terms of the pandemic is way much better. And
Yes.
this is something that I want to mention. Cuba right now is probably one of the safest destinations to travel. We were able to contain the pandemic. We're able to control it very well. That for the last few months, we haven't seen any disease. That means nobody's died of COVID-19. And the cases that we've been facing are around 20 to 40 cases per day, which is very low. And mostly the cases that we're getting are from people who are traveling from abroad. We're also going to talk about the requirements in terms of health requirements. But one thing that I want to mention, and this is important, is that when you travel to Cuba, you will be traveling to a very safe country, not only from the most broadest concept, but also from the health point of view. The use of mask right now is optional, even though we're going to require a traveler to use mask in the bus and in the closed area. But in general, the country is no longer required because most of the population is already being vaccinated. And probably most of you have been vaccinated. It is no requirement to be vaccinated, but we do expect that everybody will be vaccinated, so we make sure that we're all pretty safe. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Sharon. We're gonna talk about the airfares and the options, and then I will take over and I'm gonna talk about the itinerary, the documents, and we're gonna open it to questions that people might have. Thank you.
One thing I just want to mention is that Mary joined us.
Oh,
So
yeah.
do you want to say hi to us, Mary? Everybody else has introduced themselves, so you want to just say who you are?
I'm
Mary?
sorry, was that me?
Yeah, you, yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry to join late. I'm
That's
Mary
okay, we
Kasuth.
just-
I'm
We
Robert
missed
and Colin's
everybody.
daughter. Hi.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry
right.
to be late.
No,
Okay.
glad to have you.
Excited to be here. In fact, I sent an email out to a bunch of the SPH students here, and that's who I was just seeing. And all of them were like, oh, are you going to Cuba? I'm afraid if I go, I'll never come back. And I'm like, well, they're
So are you
very
in-
interested, but unfortunately, graduate students are also very poor. So
Yeah,
So where do you teach?
I'm a student at the University of Minnesota in the School of Public Health, Environmental Health Sciences.
Oh, well, you should be
in
interested.
Minneapolis or in Duluth?
I'm in Minneapolis. Mhm,
Oh,
yep.
okay,
Yeah, great.
great.
Back to Sharon.
Back to Sharon. Okay, so I've done a quick look at airfares for my best guess of where you would be flying out of. They actually look pretty good right now. So I'm finding flights between 350 and 500, depending on where you're flying out of. I think the most expensive one that I found is flying out of Ontario, specifically Ontario. Like I said, flights are pretty good. And the fares that I just quoted for you there, that range, those are for decent flights. Those aren't for flights. You can get them even cheaper if you're willing to fly out the day before and do an overnight flight. But at these prices, you're probably better off just paying an extra $30 or so and flying on the same day. Okay. In terms of what you need to purchase your tickets, and Mary Teresa, this is relevant for you. You will need your passport. They will ask for your passport when you book your tickets. So I know that you're in the process of getting it renewed. So as soon as that comes in, you'll be able to do that. Luckily, this isn't really, it's just before the holidays, and so it shouldn't go up dramatically. If this were a December trip, I would say buy your ticket today. But since this is before the holidays, you're in pretty good shape. You will also get a travel affidavit from the airlines. Either they'll have you fill out a form or just check a box as to what type of travel you're doing. So in this case, people to people. That's fine. That even though you've already filled one out for ProximityCuba, you can still fill out another one. It's not a single form. Not only do you need to keep a hold of your travel affidavits to show why you went to Cuba, but the service providers also have to keep a copy of your travel affidavits. That's why we ask for it. So we have to have a record that you are traveling legally through us. The airlines needs a record that you're traveling legally through us. And then you need to have a record that you travel legally. Okay. Another question that often comes up about tickets is, or about travel, is health insurance. Health insurance is included in the price of your airline ticket. So they may ask you about, you may see different things on different sites about how you need insurance to travel to Cuba. It is already part of your ticket. You'll want a paper ticket, and you'll want to carry that with you because that is your proof of insurance if anything happens. So while you could leave the US easily with your phone or, with an e-ticket, you will want a paper ticket so that you have that when you arrive in Cuba. Okay. In the past, people have tried to construct flights by flying to Florida and then Florida to Havana We do not recommend that you do that now. Unfortunately, for the folks who are traveling from Florida, Florida is the most expensive place to fly out of, and that's due to demand. So you might find that a ticket from, so the tickets from Minneapolis, the good ticket from Minneapolis is $457. It will be cheaper for you to fly from Minneapolis to Fort Lauderdale or Miami and then to Havana than it would be to fly from Fort Lauderdale or Miami directly.
I don't understand what you're saying exactly.
Okay, so for instance, some people, if you have miles or something, you might fly, say, Delta to Miami and then Southwest to Havana. In the past, we had a lot of folks that would break up their tickets,
Okay.
two separate tickets, two
Okay.
separate itineraries. It used to be cheaper. So if you search around, you might find people advising this. In this moment in time, don't do that. Florida is the most expensive place to fly out of right now.
But you'll still, if you go on a, you know, just one ticket, you will also probably be flying through Florida.
You will be, right. It'll be the
Oh.
same route and it'll be cheaper to fly from someplace else through Miami than just flying from Miami.
Okay, okay. So you don't want to do it separately, but you're okay going through Florida.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. And
okay.
everyone, pretty much I think everyone is still going through Florida right now. So
Okay.
you'll want to make
Yeah.
sure that you want to take that, transfer time into consideration. On the way out, it's not a big problem. It's relatively easy to go from a US flight to the international flight. On the way back, you'll need at least 3 hours when you book your ticket, because you'll have to go through customs in either Fort Lauderdale or Miami. And those lines can be long anyway. And if there is any secondary screening, which has been pretty unusual, but it does occasionally happen, you know, if you are taken out of line to explain that you were traveling legally to Cuba, that's that much more time you'll have to spend in customs and cutting your flight close. So like I said, at least 3 hours layover.
Just a comment on that. I'm you know, sure, 3 hours, but we happened to be, when we came back, it was everything was backed up. They didn't even look at our papers. They just ran us through, you know, as fast as they could. So it depends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't predict it. Yeah, there's no way to predict it. And the consequences of having a long layover in the Miami airport are a lot less than the consequences of missing your connection.
Yeah.
So make sure when you're doing that second leg, usually they try and warn you it's a tight connection when you try and make the reservation, but just be conscious of it. And if you know that your particular route, hello Memphis, if your particular route has a history of being delayed, you might want to have a little more of a buffer on the way out to Havana as well, right? So you should know a little bit about your own airports as to whether or not those flights are typically on time. There's never any guarantees, but what else can I tell you about flights? If you'd like, if you want to ask me a city, I've written a bunch of them down, so we can do that. Yeah, that's what I have for flights.
Well, Duluth would be coming through Minneapolis, I suppose. So, and you've already said Minneapolis is pretty reasonable. Does it have an overnight?
It does have an overnight.
Okay.
Like, I thought that I looked at Duluth specifically, but.
Well, can you even reasonably fly out of Duluth? I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, but.
Maybe that's why I don't have it.
Excuse me, Sharon.
Yes.
I just did a quick search on Kayak for flights, and it said an error occurred while trying to perform your search. Please try again. And then when I click on it, it tells me sanctions, program, and country information. And then, so how do I circumnavigate this?
You can't.
Yeah.
So you can't use kayak and some of the other searches because of the embargo. So
Okay.
kayak can't tell you the fares. However,
Okay.
Google Flights does.
Google Flights. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
And then
Sky- what about Skyscanner? Somebody mentioned that recently.
you can find flights through them if you're, I just find Google Flights easier, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
you can.
Great.
And the typical airlines are going to be American, Continental, JetBlue, and then depending on your market, Southwest. Sometimes Southwest requires that you do 2 separate bookings. So they haven't been, they used to be the great option, and they're really not right now. Let's see, a couple of you have flight possibilities. For instance, yeah, I didn't write that down. A couple of you have options for JetBlue. JetBlue is a really good option to Cuba, if you're not familiar with them otherwise.
Why are they a good option?
They have, well, first of all, they have nice planes and they're just, I mean, that matters. Nice plane, nice snacks. But they are very comfortable with flying to Cuba. So they're a really good source of information. Their check-in is relatively easy. You check in before you go through security rather than having to check in at the gate. That's something that's important to keep in mind as well. Know if your airline is going to require that you check in at the gate. So if nobody stamps your ticket with a little, or your travel documents with a little red stamp, if nobody has checked your documents, you need to go to the desk at the gate and make sure that your documents are checked. JetBlue, you do it before security. But for instance, American Airlines does it at the gate, typically. So don't sit down thinking you've got time to relax and then realize that your travel documents haven't been approved. Okay, so for flying from Indiana, the Indiana flights are really good, actually. I found them for $320, for $394. So those are really good flights.
But am I flying to Miami or to Havana?
Make the reservation for Havana. You'll have a layover, or
Oh.
you'll have a stop in Miami or
Okay,
Fort Lauderdale, but yeah.
okay, thank you.
So do you still have to fill out that health questionnaire, mostly about COVID, the sanitario or something? Because we got kind of surprised with that. Nobody had filled it out or knew about it. So there we were trying to fill out this really hard to understand form on our phones. So what's the situation on that? Are you speaking, Rodrigo? You're mute. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. The health form is still requiring Cuba to enter Cuba. If that's something they have to do it online, 24 hours before you arrive in Havana, and all airlines will give you the link. And basically, in that form, you have to put your information, your passport information, your travel information, your personal information, and then they will ask you a few questions. One of the questions is about symptoms, health symptoms. They're very upfront questions, you know, and others have to do with if you have if you have been vaccinated, and they might ask you the date you were vaccinated and which vaccine. So it is a pretty much a standard requirement now to travel everywhere in the world, in which they ask you for health questions. But also this form is used for customs. So then you have to fill out any custom form. You do it in your cell phone. You do it in your cell phone, and then they will give you a QR, and then with that QR, you just present it at the upon arrival, and they will see your all information. So
Okay.
yes,
You get the
Yes.
form enough ahead of time that you don't have to like quickly fill it out at the airport, right?
yeah,
That's
you
kind
do
of
it. You do it before you take your flight. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you. Most people do it at the airport
Oh.
while you wait for your flight. And it is required to actually to do it before you do the check-in. But since most of the you guys will do traveling in a layover because flights to Cuba mostly leave from Miami, so most of your flights will make a stop in Miami, and you might change plane, the same airline, but you might change plane. American Airlines, you know, most they travel to Miami, and then you take you take a flight that goes directly to Havana. So in that moment, you still can do that. So by having it in your cell phone with the QR, and then you just present it upon arrival in Havana. Okay, airlines will require you to have that before you take your flight to Cuba. That means from Miami to Havana. But it's always better to do it before you leave from your hometown.
Yeah.
That's
And then
Duluth.
yeah, you can do a paper form for people who would kind of balk at what's a QR code, you know, on their phones. So right.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, there's no paperwork for that, and so you had to bring your cell phone. You had to bring your cell phone,
Really?
and you had to bring your cell phone, and with your cell phone, you'll be connected. In most airports, you have free internet, and in Havana also you have 30-minute free internet upon arrival. So that means you just get connected and you find the Wi-Fi, and you can do anything. But by saving your QR in your cell phone will be much easier. Just present the QR and that's it. And I know some people are not updated with the technology, but we think it might look a little complicated, but at the end, if you follow step by step, it's pretty simple. That means is filling out a form in your cell phone, okay? And that's something that you would recommend you to do it before you go to the airport. Before you go to the airport, you take your cell phone and we'll send you the link. You put your link and you put all your information, your flight information, your flight number, your passport information, your personal information, and your all the health questions, okay? And when you submit it, it's already in the system. And after you submit it, they give you the QR code. And with that code, you go through. So that's in terms of that. Sharon, do you want to finish anything else, or should I continue with what I'm saying?
Yes, but this is related to what you're saying, so this will work. So the one more thing you'll need to know with buying your tickets is that, well, two things, but we've covered one. One is the health form, and do that before you get to the airport in both cases, right? And then the other is a visa. Now, for both of these, excuse my dog, for both of these requirements, the airlines typically cues you to get your health form and to get your visa, but they don't always. We found it's been a little bit inconsistent. So I'm putting in the chat, and we'll discuss this more later, and we'll send it out to you again, but I'm putting in the chat 2 websites. One of the websites is De Viajeros, which is where you get the health form. The second link is to Cuba Travel Services, which is where you can buy your visa. So if your airline doesn't say anything about those 2 items, go to those 2 websites and make sure you have it ahead of time. Okay. With some of the sites, with some of the booking, it's really easy to find. And for some of them, you'll get an email saying you're almost ready to go on your trip, check your documents, but they won't actually tell you what those documents are. So I just put those in the chat. And I'm sure Rodrigo will send those out to you as you get closer to the time. But if you want to kind of check out what that looks like, you can do that.
I'll save the chat so people have that. The other thing that I found really confusing is it's a visa from the US point of view, but it's called a tourist card in Cuba, right?
Call you what?
A tourist card.
Tourist card.
Tourist
You know, you want to say, I'm not a tourist, that's illegal, but they have different names, which could be just a little confusing, I thought. Is it
The one-
is that
the
the one that's
other
called a
thing-
tourist card? It is?
Yeah, right, yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is don't let all this put you off from not going or feeling like you can't handle it. Like Carla or I could answer some of your questions, or Sharon, or so if you know, you can always email and say, I get what this is. So I just, all this stuff, it sounds very confusing. It's probably not as confusing as
Yeah,
it sounds, and don't let that put you off in any way from going.
it's also, all these complications are what's happening with international travel in general, right? I mean,
Yeah,
quite as
right.
much as Cuba, but yeah, it's, just, you know.
And the
it's-
blockade makes it worse,
Yeah, of course.
you know, so,
Yeah, we're part of what we are. This is an overwhelming amount of information in some ways. Part of this is, to tell you early and often, so that when we remind you 24 hours before your flight that you need to have that health card, you at least know what we're talking about, right? You're prepared that there's something you're going to have to do, and that hopefully no one will panic as they look for it.
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. One thing I think is very important. I just put it in the chat. My WhatsApp number and my email. I know some people are not getting my emails because for some reason they've been going to the spam inbox.
Yeah.
So that's my email number, my email address, and the WhatsApp. We do have a WhatsApp group. Just send me your number and I'll join you in a WhatsApp group. That WhatsApp group will be a space for you to ask any questions and to go over on the things that we're discussing, and that will be the best way to communicate with each other. Okay, so we do have a group, and if you have not joined to the group, just add me as your contact with the WhatsApp number that they put in the chat, which is +1 407 848 7659, and then I will add you to the group. In that group, you can share questions, concerns, and also documents that you need to submit if you haven't submitted. Okay, so that's important.
Yeah.
We're going to maintain the communication over email, WhatsApp, and we're going to create a Facebook group as well. So we're going to try to use all the social network, and you use whatever's easy for you. Some people are more into Facebook, other WhatsApp, other prefer the traditional email. Okay? Email.
So if anyone has any trouble with this, the electronics, we can help too. If you're not on Facebook, not everybody is. And I just started using WhatsApp. WhatsApp, yeah, that's a little daunting, but it's, you got to download the app, but it's not hard at all. So, again, don't be overwhelmed by this stuff.
That's right. Thank you, Carol. I think that's important. But just one a little propaganda for WhatsApp. You just only need a cell phone number, download the application, and then it's like almost using a cell phone line, but with all the properties of the social network. Okay, so that's something important, because the most I think a key thing for this trip is that we need to stay communicated. So we need to communicate with each other, so we can assist you with all this process. And as Sharon said, it might look complicated, but it's not complicated. But we're gonna accompany to you how to do all the steps that you to do things. However, the most important thing right now is to work on your flight. Once you have your flight, you need to share your flight information with us, because that means that we know at what time you're arriving in Havana, so we'll pick you up, okay? So it's important your flight information. Second important thing, by next week, you need to have submitted, I know some of you already done it, your registration form, a copy of your passport, and then the $500 deposit, which is the commitment that you're making for this trip. That means it's part of your it's part of the cost, obviously. But with this, we already know that you're coming to Cuba. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have 14 people for this trip, and we have actually 2 more with tentative, and we expect that from now, today until next week, we'll have the final list. I know some of you have sent already all the documentation. I know some of you already committed, but I know also there's some people who still undecided, and this is the opportunity for everybody to make up their mind. So that's by later next week, we expect to have the final list of travelers, and we're gonna launch step by step all the things that you need to do for this trip. Everybody's I've seen the tentative itinerary. We're gonna have another meeting in which we're gonna ask everyone for your input, because the program is subject to change, and we want to customize as much as we can. We cannot make promises, but we would like to customize your interests. For example, if in the case of marriage, she's in the public health field, you know, we can address definitely her interest on that. So everybody should do reading, should try to elaborate questions about what you want to learn in Cuba, what you like to address in Cuba, so we can customize as much as we can the itinerary. The itinerary is a full schedule. That means we'll have activities in the morning and afternoon, and in the evenings we'll have optional activities. Mostly will be cultural or informal meetings, and even at the end of the trip, we're gonna have a little party, firework party, in which we expect to invite all the Cubans that you have met during the trip, so we can say properly goodbye. So at this point, we strongly suggest to work on your flight and your documents. If you're renewing your passport, if you send us a photocopy of your old passport, or your current passport. And once you have your new passport, please take a picture and send it to us. As you know, without passport, you cannot travel. It's very important. That's key. Okay. And as Sharon mentioned, and you will need a visa to enter Cuba, which is called the tourist card, and that's something that will provide you how to get it and how to fill it out. It's very simple. It's just basically filling out your name and your passport and sign it. That's it. Okay.
Could we go back to the deposit for a minute? How do people submit their $500 deposit? Could you just go over that, maybe?
Sure, thank you. We do have a link, which we have as several options for payment. Okay. Sorry, just looking at here at okay. One is which is the easiest one for us, is that to do a direct deposit from your account to our account, which is the Wells Fargo Bank. It's under International Outreach Educational Center, and we'll give you the routing number, and that will be the easier. The second option is to use PayPal. We'll also provide you with the email address. It is in the website, but we're gonna definitely put it in the WhatsApp. We're gonna make a little summary for everybody to have all the options. Using PayPal, you just need an email account, and you can transfer the money over PayPal. The third option is the old-fashioned. If you want to write a check and mail it, will give you a PO box where you can mail it. I know most of you you're not already using check, but it's still an option. So basically, we have three options: direct payment, and that's can done from your account as a direct deposit to our account. Second, PayPal, and third, a check in the mail. Okay.
Isn't it correct
yeah.
that you don't want to say Cuba in any of these transactions, like on your check?
Thank you, Carol. That's very important. Okay.
Yes,
We want to make sure that you'll never put the word Cuba in any money transaction,
Right.
because automatically, the banking system will have a red light. Whenever if you put the Cuba name in your check or in your PayPal or in the direct deposit, you say, the bank will hold and freeze your money automatically. Okay. Until you had to prove that you're doing a legal trade. So the best way to avoid that problem is just not to mention Cuba. It is crazy. It is crazy, but
yes,
One of the
Very
crazier
crazy.
things, isn't it? Yeah.
it's very crazy.
because those countries are in the list of the terrorist countries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you should look at our Solidarity Committee of the Americas Facebook page. We will be having some information on it about the campaign to stop the US from calling Cuba a state sponsor of terrorism. And that's a really important thing because it freezes all the financial opportunities for people to communicate with Cuba. So it's, if you have the word Cuba on whatever you're doing. So we'll probably on the trip, you will learn a lot about the blockade, about the state sponsor of terrorism, and a lot of other issues related to the US. The US's actions against Cuba.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's the connection gets frozen. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever you need to
Yeah.
do. We don't want to lose.
You're doing really well for a connection from Cuba. You have one of the best connections I've seen.
Thank you, Mercy. I think it's important, to not to go make that mistake. So, lesson one: no, put the word Cuba, and
Yes.
hopefully one day everybody will travel without a problem freely to Cuba. But unfortunately, we have a U.S. Blockade against the Cuban people. So, and one of the reasons of this trip is for you to understand this complexity, this relationship, this ongoing warfare from the United States to Cuba, and you will notice, and I hopefully everybody who have been to Cuba can agree with me that Cuba is not really it's not a terrorist country. It's a very peaceful country. It's a very safe country. It's a country that actually Americans are highly welcome.
Yeah.
This is not a place that people hate Americans in spite of the blockade. People actually welcome Americans, and actually average Cubans know a lot about United States.
Yeah.
Sure, sports.
Absolutely.
And Cubans aren't getting shot by police and by each other like they are in the United States. It's just incredible how the gun problem is exploding here. And
In the
that's what
US,
happened in Cuba. I mean,
One of the interesting things about last Monday, it was the first day of school here, and all the parents were put in the social network that my kids are not using bulletproof backpack. Something that we know is becoming popular now in the United States. A lot of parents concerned because so much violence, buying bulletproof backpack, bulletproof for the kids. In Cuba, those things don't exist. Children go safe to the school. Okay, so it would be important that everybody is connected with us through email, WhatsApp, or the Facebook group. I think one of the key things at this point is that we have to have communication. I know you have more questions. We don't pretend to cover everything tonight. This is just an introduction. Introduction is for us to get to know each other. And we're gonna arrange a new Zoom meeting in which we're gonna invite everybody else. People still, working on. So we're gonna have probably in the next 2 weeks after we have the final list, another meeting, and which we're gonna go over on details, more details. So that's all that I want to say for tonight, and open for questions, for suggestions, or for any concern. Sharon already shared the visa tourist card on the chat, and also the health form that's required in Cuba. We're gonna share those things in all those channels of communication. So please, if you have any question, here we are.
I have one question.
Oh, I see.
This trip was titled. I was surprised to see what you came up with for a title, that Cuba's at a crossroads. I mean, in a sense, Cuba's always at a crossroads, isn't it? So I'm just wondering what particularly, I mean, at a crossroads between like capitalism and socialism or something, but yeah, so.
Cuba is going through a very unique period of history right now. Has faced a lot of challenges. Obviously, the pandemic, it was one of the biggest challenges. And okay,
Yeah.
so I was saying that it's a crossroad because the pandemic, but also all these accidents that Cuba faced. A few weeks ago, we have a big fire in Matanzas.
Oh God, yes.
And all deposits. It was a big tragedy. And a few months ago, we have an explosion in one of the finest hotels in La Habana. A lot of people died. It was very moving for Cuban people. We have an airplane who crashed. Those events, those tragedies are very uncommon in Cuban history. And so there've been a big impact. But also, we're in moments of resistance. And the situation with the blockade is becoming difficult. Unfortunately, President Biden has not made any progress on the U.S.-Cuba relations. And we still under the same, practically the same policy of President Trump.
Yeah.
Trump, as you know, passed 243 measures to strangle the Cuban economy. So Cuba is going through difficult times, very difficult times. There's a lot of scarcity. We have a summer with a lot of blackouts. And in fact, we still have some blackouts. And that affects all walks of our life. Not only our personal life, but also work life. We have a blackout, you have internet, you have, it's just, everything is making it difficult. And the good thing is that all these blackouts have been scheduled, so everybody get it. And we have a schedule in different regions, different municipalities, in different neighborhoods. So, for example, in my neighborhood, we have 3 blackouts scheduled per week. One in the day, another one at night, etc. So we're going through difficult moments. And the Cuban economy is just beginning to recover. And one of the main motors of the economy is tourism. And so somehow you'll be supporting the Cuban economy by just going to Cuba. And Cuba is doing the best to accommodate people around the world, and especially United States, because the closeness, the geographical closeness, and the history. So that's more or less why we call it Cuba the crossroad. We're going through changes. We're going through challenges, but also we're going through a refinement the objective of developing a society that's based on social justice, solidarity, internationalism, and we're about to have a referendum in a couple of weeks in which we're going to pass probably one of the most advanced, the most progressive family codes in the world. It's a legislation that protect and expand the rights and responsibility of all type of families in Cuba, and go from elderly to handicapped families to the welfare of how we have to relate each other in the Cuba of the 21st century. So that's something very important. I will suggest people to follow up on the referendum. This is actually a great democratic exercise that Cuba can show to the world, because it's a document that's been debated in Cuba for more than 2 years. It's not just a referendum. It's not just like the government presenting a paper for you to vote. It's something that's been debated, discussed, amended, changed, modified this document several times based on the inputs of the people, because the government is always trying to look for a consensus, to find a consensus. And despite that, we do have some resistance from some fundamentalist groups, and also from some people in Miami who are running a campaigns against these family codes and asking people to vote no. So that's something, I'm sorry that I went over. I'd like to take more questions, please. Thank you, Carol, for the question.
I think somebody had their hand up. I don't know. Oh,
Yes, Shidali.
Hello. And when I tried to book a ticket for United Airlines, there is no option for people to people thing. The only option is support the Cuban people.
Okay, it should have an option of educational activity. It should have an education, and that's the one you should mark. The educational activity is the same one. The people to people is part of the educational activity. So if you do have the option of educational, mark that one. You still can mark the support the Cuban people. Both options are fine. And that doesn't mean that you're coming to Cuba to support the people. The people to people is to interact with Cuban people. Generally, the people to people educational activity is a little more broader. To support the Cuban people, you probably might want to bring a donation, for example. You collect some donation from your church, from your union, or for your organization, and you can donate it to a community project. That's a way that you're legally coming to Cuba. So both options are fine.
Say that I'm ashamed to say that my education is limited to the United States K-12 education system, which means that we didn't really talk about Latin America very much at all, let alone Cuba. And so I'm catching up right now, and I'm reading this An American History, Cuba and American History by Ada Ferreira. And I'm wondering if there's any other books that you might recommend, Rodrigo, or anyone else that would be beneficial.
I think Sharon can puts a great reading list, so maybe she can comment on some recommendation. Sharon.
Well, I have a big list, so probably I should mail it out to you guys. Is there I have a group list here, but it really depends on what you're interested in. So there is a great book on Cuba's medical internationalism that talks about the medical brigades that serve all around the world. There is the Cuba Advantage, which is talking about, and these are all in English, of course, talking about the Cuban education system, K through or pre-K through university. And why that's been so effective. There is a great book called Cuba and Its Neighbors about democracy in Cuba. Let's see, there's a great
Helen
book,
Yaffe's book.
a huge compendium by Aviva, excuse me, Marcy?
Oh, I was thinking Helen Yaffe's book.
Helen Yaffe's book. And Aviva Chomsky has a great book, but
Oh, yeah.
a nice compendium. But I will compile, I mean, I probably have 20 books on a list. And I can compile that and I will roughly categorize them. So history versus separate policies versus an interesting one that many people, I'm not sure that everyone would support, but it's actually really interesting, is Cuba Revelations by Mark Frank. Is a really interesting book on how things have been discussed over the last 20 years, 15, now I guess 10 years. So, but I'll put those in a list for everyone.
One other thing I'd suggest is just a regular travel guide, like Lonely Planet or whatever. You know, it's not really biased or anything, but you visit so many places that are, you know, big historical of significance, and they're in the Lonely Planet. It also has maps, and you know, so that's really useful just in terms of, you know, understanding where you are and what you're seeing. And I've also, this is a whole other thing.
You know,
What? As far
I was
as,
just going to say,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to comment, when we have the itinerary, we can put one together that's specific to the itinerary.
Yeah, great.
A little travel guide specific to it. Sorry.
I also discovered sort of belatedly that your phone, you know, your smartphone picks up the Jeep, even if you have everything turned off, your data and your Wi-Fi, it picks up the GPS, and there's a map in your phone that shows you where you are in Cuba. I didn't really realize that till I came back, but that's useful to figure out, you know, how you can use it too. So, which was helpful about airfare and all that.
I have maybe a kind of question. As we said, we spent a lot of time in East Asia, particularly some years in China. And I would be curious, Rodrigo, get your comments on how Cuba is related to other countries. I mean, is Cuba a member of ALBA with Venezuela? Is that the case? And what other connections? I'm always, well, I'm not so keen on this country of ours, and some of the best times of my life have been spent outside of it, I have to say. So anyway, but beyond that, you know, the Caribbean and ALBA, which I know something about, I read, I don't know if you were familiar with the Monthly Review. I subscribe to the Monthly Review, and there's good articles about Cuba periodically. Helped me a lot to understand what's been going on in Cuba. I've been subscribing for 25 years or something like that. And but what about Cuba specifically, relations with China, Russia, other places in Europe? That's something I know less about. I wonder if you'd be curious to hear something about that.
Thank you, Robert. Obviously, during the trip, we'll have a great opportunity to learn about Cuba's relationship with all these countries. But I want to quickly mention that Cuba has established great diplomatic relations with practically all countries in the world. Only 2 countries that Cuba still doesn't have a normal diplomatic relations. So. And Cuba is, as you said, is part of ALBA, which is the Latin American Progressive Governments coalition that include Venezuela, Nicaragua, and other countries. And the relationship with China and Russia are very interesting to study, because they're actually very good, not only from the political and economic point of view, but also from the cultural and academics. For example, Havana has the Confucian Institute, as some cities in the United States has it too, you know. which is an academic and a cultural connection between both countries. Cuba has a small Chinatown because we do have a small percentage of Chinese descendants, Cuban Chinese. We have a big migration 150 years ago from China, similar to the United States, through the railroads. And the relationship with Russia are not only economic, but also there's no visa requirement between both countries. So any Cuban who has the money to pay the ticket, obviously, who want to go to Russia can just take a ticket without visa. And that show that, and that's important because most countries require Cubans to have a visa. And one of them is the United States, which is very difficult to get a visa to travel to the United States, among other countries. So I think that when you're here, we definitely want to explore that, and you're going to get to see, have a little taste on how Cubans vision those relationships with those countries. So we can include it in our discussion. Thank you.
Maybe a quick follow-up. What's the number of non-Cuban residents in Cuba, for example? I mean, are there quite a few people besides embassy people? Are there other people who are living in Cuba from other countries? I've spent a lot of time overseas, both of us, and sometimes the most interesting people I meet are not other Americans, but people from other countries who've also come to that country. That's always been very stimulating and interesting.
I don't have the numbers, but I can tell you a couple of things. Cuba hosts a lot of international students from mostly from the third world, Latin America, Africa, and Asia. But also we have a student from the United States, from Europe. We have, I think, around 100 students from the United States studying medicine in Cuba. So we do have students coming to Cuba. That's one. Two, we have a lot of people doing business with Cuba, for joint ventures. So we have foreigners who live in Cuba because they're working. And three, yes, we do have some small migration, historically from Haiti and Dominican Republic, but also from Latin America, from people who fled from the right-wing military dictatorship to Cuba, establish the resident as immigrants. So yes, we do have some. Cuba is not a country that receive a lot of immigrants as the United States or as other countries in the developed countries. But we do have a number of foreigners who actually live permanently in Cuba. And we can also talk about that when you're here.
Okay. We hear from a lot of people that they want to retire to Cuba.
Right.
Is that something they can do very easily?
Actually, there's some people from Europe who have been coming for retirement and from Canada. And they've been able to buy an apartment, and Canadians, they get automatically visa for 6 months. So a lot of Canadians come here for 6 months, mainly winter time, and spend the winter in Cuba, and they go back to Canada during the summertime. So yes.
That sounds nice.
I might just want to make a comment to other people. I don't know, people have been to Cuba, it seems, quite a few times, but Rodrigo mentioned the friendliness and the welcomingness of the Cuban people, and I totally believe it. We were in Palestine, you know, of all places, a place that, one of the few places that has been treated even worse by America than Cuba. And even so, people were always coming up to us on the streets, and we have our bones to pick with your country, but we are so happy that you are here. We are so eager to talk to you, so eager to show you our lives. And it just was incredible, in spite of all the things that the United States has done. So I can totally believe that because I've experienced it elsewhere,
And those of us who've been to Cuba have a similar experience where people are so happy to see us there and excited and to hear about our feelings about Cuba and about just welcoming. So
Mhm.
it's a very friendly, I think of any place I've traveled, it's the most friendly place to travel to.
Yeah.
So do we need a visa?
Yep.
Yeah,
Rodrigo went over
Okay.
that pretty thoroughly, or Sharon did too. So it's,
Oh,
you can see it if you want to, watch this once it's put up there. and-
okay, all right.
Yeah.
and we'll make sure you get all the information you need about, it's not hard to get, so,
Okay.
Yeah, it's real automatic.
yeah.
Well, should we, I think we probably exhausted Rodrigo and Sharon. Should we close it?
If you,
Right?
Carla, if you allow me to say the last thing for tonight. I've already been joining some people with the WhatsApp group. Please send me your WhatsApp. That will be a good channel of communication. Make sure you have my email and send me just hi on email so I can be sure that we get connected. We're gonna make a summary of the things that we discussed today, and we're gonna put it in email and WhatsApp. So so for you to move on this trip. I think it is important that you begin to prepare yourself logistically, but also emotionally for this trip. We recommend you to read and to Google Cuba, Google things, and please do not hesitate to ask me any question. I'll be available to respond not only questions about management of the trip, but also about political, social, cultural issues around Cuba. So I thank you, all of you, for coming to the Zoom meeting. We're gonna announce a new meeting. We'll do it on Wednesday. It seems that Wednesday evening is the best day for most of you. So we probably gonna plan a second meeting in 2 weeks from now, and we'll let you know over WhatsApp and email so we can and go over on a few things. We're gonna be seeing each other a lot virtually. We promise to keep our meetings just for 1 hour. We don't want to have long meetings. I know everybody's busy. Our maximum will be 1 hour, and we'll eventually get to meet in person in Havana. And I'm really looking forward to meet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, yep.
Thank you.